Try again.
Oh my God, my PowerPoint just disappeared.
Live.
Oh no.
Oh. Just a minute here. We're going to.
Folks, 1 second. We're having strange technical difficulties. Oh my God. Oh, yeah.
Of course, since it's our first time, there has to be at least one technical difficulty.
It's so weird that it just shut like that because it was just on. So hi, folks. I had hoped to look all polished and prepared as this was starting out, but it will be here in a half a second. So welcome to the FACA presentation of Juhannus and Toivola, Michigan, 130 plus years in the festival. Oh yeah. This is happening.
Just a second. Hopefully we'll get everything out.
Oh boy. Well, if that won't fluster people, I don't know. Well, okay, close. I got what I need. Thank you. Slideshow.
It's amazing.
Okay, so now that terribly awkward, sorry. Okay, so now that terribly awkward thing happened, welcome to Juhannus and Toivola, Michigan, 130 plus years in the life of a festival. My name is Hilary-Joy Virtanen, and I'm Assistant Professor of Finnish and Nordic Studies at Finland University. I'm also a native of Toivola in a strange kind of quasi way. So this is a great fun topic to get to speak about. I just want to thank FACA for inviting me to join you all tonight and to take part in some COVID time fun. And I also want to thank the people of Toivola for all the really great things that they've done for me over the years and for having such a great festival in the first place. One thing I'll say before I begin is that you do have the possibility with this lecture to ask questions in the YouTube channel. And so what you can do is, it looks like on the right-hand side of your screen, you can post your question. I will wait until the end to answer the questions, and that's simply because I actually can only see my slideshow on my computer right now. I can't see any of you, I can't see my own face, and I can't see the YouTube questions. So just go ahead, if you think of a question, put it right in the list, and then as soon as I'm done, if it didn't get answered during the course of the paper, or if we want to discuss it more, we'll go ahead and do that. So thank you all for coming and welcome. Tervetuloa. So the first thing I'll say is to start, Toivola, Michigan is a rural community originally based in farming, forestry, and fishing in the western Upper Peninsula of Michigan. Home to several hundred people, Toivola was founded in 1892 by a small group of Finnish immigrants who took out homestead lands and helped one another to build their farms. Over time, the community attracted more and more Finns and soon had many hallmarks of many other Finn towns across the nation, including an Apostolic Lutheran church, a Suomi-Synod church, a temperance society, a co-op store, and a workers' hall. While over the years, farming, fishing, and forestry have reduced, descendants of the early settlers continue to form a significant part of the population. And additionally, those who no longer live in the area often are summertime or other time guests during the year. Toivola can be conceived of as several distinct areas. Those who drive along State Highway M26 will see a small roadside community with a post office, a roadhouse, a County Road Commission garage, and a road down which one can turn, which is lined by a handful of houses. Following this turnoff, we'll take the driver through a forest dotted with the occasional home, often with remnant farm buildings, and side roads that will take you to more of the same. Eventually, the road branches off. To the left, one can go to Misery Bay, and yes, if you didn't know that, the Vale of Hope, or the Community of Hope in Finnish, dead ends on one side in a place called Misery Bay, which is the side of Toivola where my family's from. Thank you. And to the slight right is Agate Beach, where the festival takes place. Both roads end at public beach areas with boat launches, but Agate Beach features more amenities, including a campground, a hall with a kitchen, a concession stand, an outdoor pavilion, and the all-important outhouses. The beach, too, is larger and more conducive to groups. So Juhannus, a Finnish name for St. John the Baptist, is the name of the Finnish holiday marking in what other places is often called midsummer or the summer solstice. The observation of St. John's feast day is on June 24th will be discussed later, but though the day coincides with the saint's feast, it is in many ways more of a secular agricultural festival in nature. In Toivola, the celebration takes place on the weekend closest to St. John's Day. In recent years, this has also been very close to the solstice of the 21st. I can't remember the first time I heard of Juhannus, and I also can't remember a time when I didn't know about it. Though a native of Toivola, I largely grew up away from Michigan, and so occasional visits to my great-grandparents' home on Misery Bay were a time my family looked forward to, and making the visit coincide at least slightly with Juhannus was a goal, even if it wasn't always attainable. At Misery Bay, which is about a mile's walk down the lakeshore from the Juhannus grounds at Agate Beach, there was this beautiful sandy beach which bordered a birch forest. Wild strawberries kicked off a season of finding sweet things you could pick off of plants and just eat right off them. This is something that was not as common in southwestern Wyoming. My great-grandparents told family stories and hilarious jokes in their sing-songy, central Finland-flavored English. Cousins I saw only periodically would create swords out of sticks, and so I could join them in playing He-Man and Battle Cats. So you can tell I grew up in the 80s. And we would burn large, glorious open bonfires on the beach, roasting foods in it, and sometimes very late at night, watching the northern lights dance in the sky as the waves of Lake Superior lapped the shoreline. Not all of these bonfires took place on Juhannus, but each was, when necessary, an approximation of it, so that we belonged to a tradition in which summer bonfires were normal ways in which to reunite with our home village. As a graduate student, I began to research the festival life of Finnish Americans. First studying Heginpäivä and St. Urho's Day, I came into Juhannus when I returned to live in the Upper Peninsula full-time. And this also allowed me to devote time to fieldwork, which is the experience of gathering information and being a part of Juhannus firsthand. The first Juhannus I attended at this time was in 2012. I have since attended most Juhannus festivals in Toivola, and though, as I will describe later, aspects of the festival can vary quite broadly, there are basic elements of the festival that are consistent from year to year.
I have one quick question. Do you want to try sharing your screen?
Do I what?
Cool. Slides are. Do you want to try sharing your screen again? The slides are not visible.
You can't see the slides?
No.
Oh, you're kidding. Oh my gosh, it's been just my face the whole time. Hi, Jean Hardy. Thank you for tuning in. Oh boy, that's really strange. Thank you for letting me know that. This is really strange. Is it visible now?
There you go. Looks good. Okay. When you
Okay, so should I do the slideshow? Do it. I try to do it as a slideshow? I can see myself in the YouTube on the side.
there looks good.
It's weird because I see that there's a delay. Okay, there we go. Okay, so Jean, thank you very much for letting me know. Yay is right. So let's see. Gosh, this is just like the most flustering lecture I've ever given. Hopefully we'll live through it and something strange won't happen. I'll just walk through the slides very quickly and then I'll pick back up where I left off. So here is Toivola, which you can see. It's along Lake Superior in the copper country of Michigan. Here's Agate Beach and Misery Bay, the two sides of Toivola off the road that are kind of different parts of town. Here's how I came to know Juhannus. So again, my family story of being a part of this. And now I'm going to tell you about the hallmarks of the festival itself. So again, there's these basic elements every year of the festival that you're always going to see. And if they aren't there, then it's kind of a problem. So Juhannus is largely organized by two primary groups, the Toivola Volunteer Fire Department and the Toivola Senior Citizens, which has a bit of an overlapping membership. Additionally, individual community members make their own contributions to the celebration. The festival always incorporates certain basic elements. First, the bonfire pyre, the kokko, itself must be constructed. This is coordinated by members of the Toivola Volunteer Fire Department. Over the year, community members put aside wood planks for the bonfire, and when everyone has some free time, a day or so before the festival, they cart the wood to the beach in several truckloads. This video, created as a part of a team-taught folklore field school through the University of Wisconsin-Madison, in which I took part in 2018, shows how the bonfire is constructed. Okay, and so that's the bonfire that we have in Toivola. That's one of the main elements. Feasting is another major element. The hall that is at the beach is arranged with long tables and the kitchen is prepared for use. In this space, a potluck meal will be held during the festival. A range of traditional American potluck dishes with a few Finnish touches will be offered, from hearty stews, pasta salads, deviled eggs, leipäjuusto, cakes, brownies, and of course coffee. The meal is always enough to feed all who come, and it provides an important opportunity for community members and others to socialize. Song and dance at the pavilion is also quite important. The pavilion next to the hall is lined with benches along the periphery and with amplifiers and microphones on one end. Here, musical performers will provide entertainment in the hours before the bonfire is lit. The music performed is a combination of informal jamming as well as planned performances by specifically invited musicians. Along the Agate beach area, campers and tents and RVs have settled themselves in. Some have come for Juhannus, but many also have not. They provide an interesting element to the festival as they are welcome to participate in the event as they like. Some may wander into the potluck, and many are drawn to the mesmerizing glow of the kokko. As the outhouses are situated convenient to both the hall and one of the larger camping areas, interactions between different groups are a natural feature of the festival. And so now it gets all brought together. We've constructed a kokko, we have food, we have music. Sometimes t-shirts or buttons are sold. Sometimes a special dignitary might give some sort of program, perhaps a speech or a prayer. As the afternoon continues into dinner time, the informal jams may have already started and the potluck will also start. Then there is more music and dancing in the pavilion. As the evening continues, a variety of factors will dictate when precisely the fire will be lit. Weather, for instance, is one factor. Another is the size and temperament of the crowd. If they are enjoying themselves at the pavilion and hall, there is no need to light the fire particularly early. At this time of year, visible light can remain even past 10, but usually around, seems about 9:30 or so, the bonfire might end up being lit. Eventually, though, members of the fire department go down to the kokko with the lighting equipment, and climbing the protective fence into the kokko enclosure, they light the pyre, and within minutes, a majestic bonfire with high flames and intense heat mesmerizes the onlookers, who often watch in appreciative silence. Along the ridge overlooking the beach and the bonfire, local musicians will gather to perform Finnish and Finnish American music. People will take photographs and videos. Campers, some with cans and bottles of beer and koozies, will join in to see what is going on. Children run up and down. Some people swim or pick agates. After a while, the crowd may start to thin. As the sun's light vanishes and the fire eventually settles into a shorter, superheated mass of orange surrounded by lava-like coals, Juhannus eventually recedes into the night. The celebrants grab their potluck dishes, the musicians pack up their instruments. The kids fall asleep in the car ride home. The campers settle back into the little parties and to sleep in their tents and RVs. That is Juhannus. The Juhannus festival belongs both to a tradition in Finland as well as to a broader Nordic and European bonfire tradition associated with certain parts of the year. Throughout a variety of locations in Europe, from Ireland to Slovenia to the Nordic lands and beyond, ritual and festival fires marked the season as people's agricultural work began in earnest around Easter. In some places, the solstice was recognized, and also at the end of the harvest season in early November. Matti Sarmala highlights that midsummer bonfires before the 1800s were predominant in eastern Finland, while in the west, and especially the southeast, Easter fires were more common. And this map here, this actually is an open source book called Finnish Folklore Atlas. If you Google it, you can download your own copy, and it's a wonderful book. It's got maps that detail different aspects of Finnish traditions. And so here, what this map is showing, because the print might be a little small to look at, is most of Finland has these horizontal lines, and that shows that this is where Juhannus bonfires were traditionally done. But you can see that it's kind of central, very north Pohjanmaa, parts of Lapland, and then Karelia and Savo, where this was primarily practiced. But in Western Finland, bonfires would typically happen at other times, especially around Easter and also around Vappu or May Day. So this tradition of bonfires has different dates, and there's kind of interesting reasons for that I'll get into in a minute. The popularity of Juhannus grew throughout the 1800s until it became the primary bonfire festival in Finland, and now it's a national holiday. Finns today try to spend their Juhannus weekend with family at a cottage. Public bonfires, similar to those found in Toivola, are not uncommon. Different styles of bonfire pyres have historically been found around Finland, forms of which will be described later. In the past, it was often typical that community bonfires would be built using important pieces of wood from community members, perhaps farm implements or tar barrels or even boats. This made the fire that would result a personal commitment, as it was something each person contributed to. Additionally, ashes would often be taken by the participants to spread in their own cropland, thus providing for scientifically proven luck in the coming harvest. Other midsummer traditions and beliefs exist. One is that on Midsummer Eve, unmarried young women would pluck 7 different blossoms and fern and place them under her pillow so that she might dream of her future husband. Girls could use the collapse of the pyre during the blaze to determine aspects of future marriage prospects as well. The girl would choose what side they thought the bonfire would go, fall over toward. And then when it fell in that certain direction, the girls who got the correct direction, they knew that, oh, my boyfriend's coming from the east, or whatever the thing was, So they could also do things as it got smaller. Of course, you could jump over the smoke as a sort of sign of strength. And I've heard of other traditions, kind of more Germanic, maybe even places like Estonia, which isn't Germanic, but where people would, a couple would hand in hand jump over the fire together, and it would sort of determine different aspects of their luck as a couple, like which one kind of is more in charge in this relationship? Are they going to be lucky at all? Oh no, they just burnt their feet. That's probably a bad relationship. So all kinds of interesting things could be prognosticated during the midsummer, and a lot of times it had to do with love. Also common across Europe was this idea that fires burn above hidden treasure. So if you see a little glow in the forest in midsummer, you might want to go see if it's a treasure. And also that northward flowing streams would flow with wine at that time. In Finland and the US, people would decorate their houses and yards with flowers and birch saplings and other such summery natural materials. One idea that we should examine is the antiquity of such festivals themselves. It is common for several assumptions to be made about the origins of midsummer solstice celebrations, not just in Finland, but across Europe and really anywhere as well. These assumptions place solstice fires as having origins in pagan sun worship. This, however, is disputable for several reasons. First, in areas where the midnight sun phenomenon means continuous or near continuous light for large portions of the summer, its opposite phenomenon, sunless days in winter, is a really important noticeable feature in daily life that people would want to see end at some point, for all kinds of reasons, right? As Sandra Billington argues, using Scandinavian, Germanic, British, Celtic, and Greco-Roman information, the return of daylight as a life-giving force was more important to people who were hunter-gatherers, pastoralists, and agriculturalists. The summer solstice actually represents a return to gradual darkness and not the strength of the sun. She also points out that many solstice festivals have their origins in Roman and later early Christian practices that moved north during the Roman Empire, the Dark Ages, and even during the Christianization of the Vikings. Time measurement for people in the far north was measured less by a calendar and more by when things could be done and when significant seasonal phenomenon had been observed to have happened. Times now associated with Easter in this conception would have been more significant, both for the increased daylight as well as for the possibilities for subsistence production. You could start farming at some point by then. Data from Finland, such as the map we have seen, reveal that in many places before the 1800s, and especially in the rural kind of western portions of the country, Easter, and also the cities along the coast, Easter was a more significant time to burn the fire, and it was precisely because of its functions as an agricultural event. By June 24th, the crops are growing, and thus the path toward luck in food production has already hopefully been taken, unless you're me, who just put out her cucumber seeds last week. At any rate, Juhannus as a midsummer practice has been a part of Toivola's life since its inception. So let's go ahead and take a look at that. According to Armas K.E. Holomio, and this is a difference between what Toivola says about itself, in the fall of 1893 and not 1892, a handful of Finnish men took homestead papers in Toivola and worked together to set up their new lands by building first a sauna for one of the men and later a cabin for another in which they all lived that first winter. By Vappu, May 1st, 1894, their wives and children and another bachelor joined them, and in this way, Toivola as a community truly began. I should also point out that Toivola wasn't really formally called Toivola until 1901 when they got a train station, and before that, people were kind of playing around with different names that they wanted, and one of the names that an earlier minister who would come in and baptize people wanted for the community was Urhola. And of course, Urho is a word that a lot of Finnish Americans are familiar with because of Saint Urho. But the word Urho itself means like a hero. And so it's kind of funny to think that perhaps Toivola could have been a little stronger in the Saint Urho celebration bandwagon as well if we had just had a different name. But Toivola is a nice, beautiful name. And again, especially when you come from Misery Bay, it's a nice little bookend to where you live. It is likely that the first Juhannus was celebrated in 1894, though that is one part of history that I have not yet documented. It is, though, considered an established fact that Juhannus was a part of Toivola community life since the 1890s. A decorative sign placed outside the Agate Beach Hall indicates the festival's indistinct beginnings with its date, 1890s to 2013. So this sign was constructed specifically for the celebration of 2013, which I'll explain a little bit later. Documenting the old history of a festival before cell phones could upload videos to Instagram and before even carrying a camera around was a common thing can be really difficult work. It comes from poring over old oral histories, old photographs, letters, diaries. This is a part of the story that I have not really delved into, largely because my work in the past few years has been to document and make sense of the Juhannus as it exists now. However, there are some things I can tell you. First, and sorry for the picture, part of COVID's problem is that I haven't been able to access some of the resources I normally would, and so I would have some more kind of festive-looking midsummer pictures, so apologies for that. But first, as Juhannus became more common in Finland, it was often celebrated by more corporate entities than what a community is thought to be. Juhannus came to the United States and Canada as something celebrated by temperance societies and workers' organizations, knights and ladies of Kalevala lodges, and in their own ways, families and communities. Armas Holmio and William Hoglund both described the Finnish National Temperance Brotherhood as having their first annual meeting on Midsummer Weekend in Hancock, Michigan, either in 1887 or 1888. Essentially, though, an outdoor celebration in a birch grove was the key feature. Speeches and music were planned, while dancing by the young, which was strictly forbidden by organizational bylaws, was apparently a spontaneous and controversial occurrence. Labor organizations, Kalevala lodges, many others, everybody felt that they could belong to the midsummer because it really was everybody's holiday. And so organizations were very, very key in bringing this tradition to America and helping to make it something that continued to be a part of Finnish American life. I should also mention that one of the kind of foundational stories of the city of Hancock, which is about 25 miles north of where we're at in this Agate Beach of Toivola, is that the first Finnish miners who came here in 1864 or 1865 arrived in Hancock on Midsummer's Eve, which in Finland is kind of this very sacred, very important day. But instead of getting the day off and being, hey guys, we have a bonfire down in this birch grove, they were told, hey guys, the mine office is that way. Go ahead and register and show up for work in the morning. So Juhannus has this very, very important connotations in Finnish American history. Oral histories conducted by Suomi College professor Art Virtanen in 1973 details small group Juhannus festivities in the Copper Country at the turn of the 1900s. In these histories, a beach picnic in the village of Jacobsville and decoration of the home and yard with greenery and birch is described. A direct description of Juhannus comes from Toivola native humorist, author, cartoonist, Michigan Heritage Award recipient, and former coyote trapper Jingo Vachon. Born in 1918, Vachon presented humorous vignettes of life in Toivola, complete with endearing illustrations. These were first published in the Lance Daily Sentinel out of Lance, Michigan, and then they were later compiled into 3 anthologies published during the 1970s. So let's go ahead and read Jingo's own description of one Prohibition-era Juhannus. The Swedes called it midsummer. Some call it the Festival of Light. But St. John's Day, the 24th of June, back in the Toivola area, was Juhannus. It was the biggest Finnish festival, and even American-born Finns from all over the USA made sure their vacations were planned to coincide with this great event that brought families and old friends back together for one monumental day each year. Festivities were usually held near the beach by a lovely river mouth, and I remember the ice cream, candy, pop stand was always in the same shady place under 2 majestic pines. Rough tables were built and placed end to end almost as far as the eye could see under the trees. They were laden with food of every description, sweet and salty, salted trout, whitefish, herring, and silakka, and every kind of sweet roll and cake imaginable, plus loaves of Finnish bread, rieska, and fruit sauces of all kinds. Stew was cooked in giant kettles over the campfires, and fresh milk was kept cool in the river. The butter had a tendency to get runny in the midday heat, so it was kept in crocks and sunk into moist sand near the waterline. Coffee was also boiled in huge pots over the campfires, and outside of the vending stand under the pines, everything else was free. Toward evening, a program was held in the country hall by local people showing off their talents with singing, musical instruments, poetry, monologues, and short skits. Then a rip-snorting dance followed that shook the walls. During the schottische, as all the dancers came down in a thunderous whomp under every other step, I swear the floor bent down. Most every family had at least one musician, so the instruments changed hands all evening. After the dance, most of the people who weren't too tired returned to the beach where the more religious older people held the fort. Many of the elders violently disapproved of dancing. A great bonfire was built on a raft, floated onto the lake if there was an offshore breeze, and then lit. It was a beautiful sight as it slowly headed toward a darkened horizon and made a golden, ripply path to the beach. There was no danger as it didn't take long to burn up and die. And if it hadn't, boats would have gone after it and scattered the burning driftwood into the lake. Jingo's accompanying drawing shows someone who didn't follow the spirit of prohibition and, having fallen asleep in the bushes, wakes up to Jingo and her friends having covered him with maple leaves and begun to sing a funeral dirge for him. I just had to include this. So if you ever do get a chance to see any of her books, if any of you have, you know that the charming illustrations are really a huge part of it. And also people who knew Jingo and maybe have seen her in the films Tradition Bearers and Amerikaneni and stuff like that. You know that she had this wonderful voice, and so you could just, hopefully you can imagine her voice as I read that, because it's really quite an important part of her storytelling. So I just wanted to include it. Jingo's description of the bonfire, though, is something that's really interesting to note. It's this short-lasting raft, and it's really interesting because this method of cocoa production and management appears to have been pretty common also in Finland, at least according to archival photograph samples. The next little piece of historical evidence comes in the form of a photo from the 1940s that is maintained in the communal collection of the Toivola Senior Citizens Group. I still have to ask to scan it properly, but here in the middle, we can see this unique form of the cocoa made with tires. Having attended a tire fire party once in high school, I was a little surprised that people would have a community festival burning such a thing, but tradition adapts to trends, societal changes, and apparently surplus sacrifices that people might want to burn. The boat bits from yesteryear are replaced with today's worn but beloved radials. This bonfire form, however, does correspond to 2 traditional but less common construction forms found during Finnish Juhannus. The first on the left is the bonfire pyre style known as the saarikokko, which was traditionally found in the Karelian Isthmus. And a couple of the early settlers of Toivola did have roots in this area, so it makes entire sense that they would remember seeing very tall pyres like this. The second midsummer form it resembles is the Swedish-style midsummer pole, or midsommarstång. Midsummer songs can be seen most notably in Brevard, Michigan, where the local Åland Island heritage community has celebrated their unique midsummer since 1903. Another can be found in Hancock, Michigan, which is this picture on the right, dating to 2014 and serving in a more corporate form of commemoration of the holiday. Jingo Vachon makes one more note in her vignette on Juhannus when she states that in approximately 1971, for the first time in 70 years, Toivola had no Juhannus at all. I went and found 2 old friends, but no one else. We built a tiny fire, decided the old days were gone for good, and sadly viewed the deserted beach. We didn't feel like talking. Luckily for Jingo, as sociologist Michael Lokinen has documented in his seminal documentary Tradition Bearers, Jingo lived to see Juhannus return to a place of importance in the community, and it hasn't left. This year, however, as COVID-19 continues to amass a shocking death toll, the Toivola Volunteer Fire Department took the step of canceling the Juhannus celebration. Together, we are safer apart. In recent times, and hopefully next year again, Juhannus, as earlier stated, is maintained by the Volunteer Fire Department and the senior citizens, by dedicated individuals who are part of the Juhannus family, and as I will describe below, by outside entities that may kind of co-opt and take parts of the festival for their own purposes from time to time. Juhannus fits a festival model that folklorists Joe Wilson and Lee Udall have called an evolving Indigenous festival. The use of the term Indigenous is not what we commonly understand it to mean, but rather it highlights the fact that the festival itself is one that was originally created by the community for the community with no regard for outside audiences. By evolving, though, we can highlight the fact that over time, Juhannus has become very accommodating to outsiders. Many of the co-options of Juhannus come through the activities of the Finnish American Heritage Center. Nominally associated with Finlandia University, the center publishes the English language Finnish American Reporter, hosts the Finlandia University Art Gallery and the archives, and offers community enrichment classes. Between 2001 and 2013, the center became the hub for the planning and execution of FinFest USA 2013, a Goliath affair that was all across the Copper Country. I bet some of you were there. For this festival, Juhannus was chosen as a sort of closing event, and the logistics were immense in scale. Food would have to be mass-produced and sold. There was a need for extra toilets. Parking for a Juhannus of 100, 200 people is one thing, but how many people would attend this one? 500, 3,000? Where would they park and how would they get in? What would the music situation be like? Who would pay for all this? Juhannus 2013 attracted approximately 1,000 people, maybe more. It was hard to count because nobody stood there with a ticker. It was hard to do that. But it is the largest Juhannus that has ever happened in Toivola. Music incorporated the informal jam method along with a special performance by the Sami choir Sami Yenat, members of whom live in all 4 of the countries with an indigenous Sami population. And that was really, really exciting. You can see on the far right, actually, if you look very closely, you'll see, for instance, Hilda Landsman, who's a very, very famous Sami singer. And also, those of you from the Twin Cities might be able to see Ellen Marie Jensen in there as well. So you got some Twin City peeps hanging out in there. Barbecue chicken was sold. Many brought their own food as well. People who parked far from the site were greeted by these really cool conveyances, as you can see on the left, automobiles that were pulling a cart. There were side-by-sides taking people, whatever could be brought was brought. Everyone managed, and it was a real success. It was a step away from this typical hometown community feel of the festival, but at the same time, it allowed the festival to feel like a massive national and international hometown community. So that was really unique and exciting. In 2017, the centennial of Finnish Independence Day was another co-option of the festival. At this event, which took place during a heavy rain, the potluck model returned, but certain special features were added. Amerikan Pojat, also from Minnesota, the Finnish American brass band headed by Paul Niemisto, was the featured performer. The local Ladies of Kaleva chapter led a singing of the Finnish national anthem. Actually, I'm occasionally a member of the Ainoan Tupa here. I think I have to turn in my dues, everybody. But you can kind of see me behind a tuba over there helping with that. A traveling sauna in honor of Finland's cultural contribution to the world took a detour to Agate Beach, and Ambassador of Finland to the United States, Kirsti Kauppi, was a guest of honor. Attendees also received a complimentary copy of the Volunteer Fire Department's cookbook, which is this real trove of recipes that are gathered from the community. Unfortunately, the uncooperative weather put a damper on things, and so sadly, for the first time ever in my visiting of a Juhannus, I actually had to leave before the bonfire was lit. I had a boot that I didn't realize had a little hole in it, and it was starting to form its own Great Lake in there, which, was just really, really miserable. So I'm sorry I left, people. I'll be back next time. Sometimes projects take place in a side-by-side manner with the festival that, while not an imposition of change the festival itself, changes the nature of it in small ways. And I've done this several times, so always co-opting Juhannus. In 2018, I was an instructional designer for the University of Wisconsin-Madison Ethnographic Field School that was put out through the Center for the Study of Upper Midwestern Cultures. With colleagues from graduate school, as well as students from UW and St. Olaf College, we spent a week together teaching the students how to observe, interview, photograph, and otherwise document the works of Finnish American traditional artists in the area. The end of our week brought us to Juhannus, at which we helped to build the koko itself as we documented its construction. We also contributed food to the potluck, which consisted of fried chicken purchased from the Mosquito Inn. We assisted in setting up the pavilion. It seemed as though we might have seen some tensions between pro and anti-dancing factions in the way the benches were told to be placed. And we documented the festival as it reached its conclusion. In 2019, with sociologist Michael Lokkanen and cinematographers Alex Meyer and Kristen Ojaniemi, I documented aspects of Juhannus for a series of films on Finnish American traditional culture that Michael and I are making. Here again, we imposed our own agenda on the activities of the festival, even as we documented how it exists in the present. So when I step into my anthropologist costume, I think of the ways that Juhannus draws meaning for different people. Obviously, to the people of Toivola, Juhannus has certain meanings that it doesn't have for people who aren't from there. It is ancestral in nature. It ties them to named, known immigrant ancestors who found it important to meet at Agate Beach once a year and to affirm their membership in a community. It allows them to see cousins, grandparents, school friends, even exes that they would rather not see. It draws Toivolians together and affirms the idea that no matter how much some things will change, some things will always stay the same. Toivola is a long-standing and highly concentrated Finnish ethnic community. The township in which Agate Beach is situated has the highest reported rate of Finnish ethnicity according to the 2010 census. This is the highest rate in the country. It is a whopping 64%. Because of this, and perhaps because of its resemblance to the landscape of Finland and its situation on the open, dramatic waters of Lake Superior, it is also a place people go when they want to explore American Finnishness. Michael Lokkanen, a Finnish American with Toivolian cousins, documented aspects of Toivola life, including the storytelling of Jingo Vachon in the early 1980s. Finnish filmmaker Hilary Virtanen made several documentaries featuring Toivola and Toivolians in the first decade of the 2000s. Finnish national rock idol, the Bruce Springsteen of Finland, Jukka Karjalainen, even made several records as an alter ego, Lännen Jukka, a Finnish immigrant who learns blues in the South, but also performs Finnish American music, as also performed by none other than Jingo Vachon. Toivola has become a symbol to outsiders of something that perhaps many feel is lost in other parts of Finnish America. It has become, as anthropologist Sherry Ortner might call it, an elaborating key symbol. A key symbol is something that a group of people imbue meaning into and then use to represent aspects of their group identity. Though not everyone may have the exact same feelings about aspects of the symbol, a general consensus exists, and through this consensus, people can acceptably use the symbol in their own ways. One key symbol most people understand is a national flag. At its consensual use, it can serve to strengthen national pride and group identity as a citizen of that nation. Not everyone, however, feels the same way about a given flag, though even not all the citizens of that state, and so there is room for varying meaning and even dissent. In being a key symbol of Finnishness, Toivola and Juhannus also serve as a point of elaboration. At Toivola, one finds people who speak Finnish. People wear apparel with Finnish motifs, words, symbols. One eats some Finnish food. One hears Finnish and Finnish American music. Some sing along. Inside the Agate Beach Hall, traditional rag rugs are on display, an emblem of ethnic Finnishness. Newspaper clippings document Toivola's historic moments in famous residence. A map of Finland with push pins invites guests to pinpoint their family's home parishes in Finland. And the map here on the wall actually shows a world map, but I didn't have a good picture of the Finnish map. A bonfire lit at the beach each year ties us all to a fuzzy past of Finland, something we don't often know a lot about, and that feels primeval. And whenever people want to drink from or add to the wall of Finnishness in some way, Toivola is often where they turn up, and most often at Juhannus. As a 42-year-old, I am often complimented on my astounding youth and precociousness. At least this is true when I first started in Finnish studies. But the fact that since childhood, I've had an interest in my Finnish heritage, I have always known that somehow this heritage in my life would be really, really intertwined, and that I'm doing things like this here and now might give people hope. There are others like me, and even younger people than me. As a professor of Finnish studies at the old Suomi College, now Finlandia University, I meet young people quite frequently who find aspects of their Finnish heritage interesting, or who aren't even Finnish at all, but recognize that there is something about this culture that they want to understand better. The way I see that young people understand things better, including their heritage, is to be exposed to it in a variety of ways. Some of these ways are quite conscious, like attending language camp at Salalampi, and some are less so, having a weekend pan of pannukakku for breakfast. As young people will explore the things that they like, music, popular culture, future potential careers, locations to visit, there's going to be a spectrum of their being drawn to Finland. Some might not be drawn at all, but others might just go wholeheartedly into it. I don't force my kids to attend Juhannus with me. I know that it can be a burden to be stuck with a folklorist mom who goes to the beach for up to 10 hours, documenting things, singing along to polkas, and hugging and chatting endless people that the kids don't necessarily know. I found, though, that after a year or so of missing a Juhannus, they do want to go back. They like being recognized as being a part of the broader Virtanen, Wiedemann, and Pennanen families. They like trying exotic potluck dishes that someone else made. I don't cook very much, although my husband does. And seeing family friend Oran Tikkanen perform. They like swimming and picking agates. And like us all, they're all mesmerized by the fire. Being cocooned in this Finnishness will allow them to navigate their own ethnicity. Like the rest of us, they too will elaborate on this key symbol. So thank you all for listening. I'm going to go ahead and switch it over to the YouTube now so we can talk. And can you hear me? So I believe that we might be on a time delay, but if people have questions, you can go ahead and type them in. It is a little odd to have a time delay because I don't know how it looks and I'm going to end up having to wait. But if you have questions at all, go ahead and ask. The other thing I'll do is I'm going to go ahead and put my email address here. And so if people have other things they want to chat with me about, if they've got old, a picture of 1894 Juhannus that they want to scan and send to me, that would be great. It'd be like the Holy Grail. So here is my email address. So, okay, we have a question. Thank you, Margaret. Thank you, Margaret, for watching. With no Juhannus this June, will there be one later in the summer or will they wait until next year? So there wouldn't be one later in the summer. They will wait for next year. One thing that Toivola does, and I don't know if they've canceled it yet, is in the month of August, they have the Agate Beach Jamboree, which is this really, really fun jam session that people participate in. So, they might have that. I don't know, fingers crossed, but if not, maybe we could live stream something or something. Maybe Toivola will go on the web. So how did I spend Juhannus this year? I spent Juhannus writing a lecture about Juhannus. So I guess you could call that like a busman's holiday, right? I was very concerned with making this good, and I was having a little bit of a panic because there were some of my field notes and kind of historic photographs I couldn't find. So that was my Juhannus. It was fun. Okay, and I see that they are still planning to have the Jamboree at Agate Beach so far. So that's really cool. So I've got a question here. Could I talk more about how corporations and businesses have co-opted Juhannus in Finland? Gosh, that's a really good question that I don't really know. Thank you for asking that, Jean, actually. For one thing, I will give the disclaimer that I have never gotten to go to a Juhannus in Finland because I'm always here for it. So I haven't gotten to see like if there's sponsorship or something like that of it. I don't know if there's anybody in the audience, or even maybe Christina, our moderator, who's been, but that would be a good question to ask. And so I am sorry that I don't have the answer, Jean, but I will actually look into that and send you information since we're in touch. I have a question from Margaret. Do your students normally participate in the Juhannus as a part of class? They can. And so sometimes this year I didn't do it because of COVID, but they have an activity assignment they can do called the cultural activity assignment, where they have to go to one event that has something to do with Finnish culture and document and write about it and compare it to what we've learned about Finnish culture in class. So I have had students, it's kind of fun when I get to see my students at the Juhannus doing their homework and enjoying themselves at the same time. A question from Urho Rahkola. Are you familiar with Toivola, Minnesota? I am. And I don't know too much about the history of that community. I remember when I was younger, I was probably in my 20s when I first heard of that town. And so every once in a while, when I first started out in Finnish studies, and I would say I was from Toivola, I thought I could just say, I'm from Toivola. And then people were like, oh, well, I'm from Toivola too. And then it turned out they were speaking of Minnesota, or not necessarily that they were directly from there, but maybe had ancestry from there. So yeah. Are you from there? So I don't know if there's more questions or if people want to wrap it up for the night or what, but I can just say right now that the work that I do with Finnish Americans is very exciting because people tell me stories about their lives. They share pictures of their ancestors. They help me to understand Finnish culture in a very, very kind of deep and meaningful way. And so Urho Rahkola says he lived there for about 5 years when they first moved to this country. Oh, that's really cool. Huh. So these details like this, like learning about somebody from Toivola, Minnesota, is something that helps me to understand what Finnish America is like in a really, really broad sense. So thank you, PLM. I had a very interesting presentation. Thank you all for being patient as we had some glitches at the start. This was definitely the first time that I've done a live stream like this. And it's kind of funny because there's actually a time delay between me speaking. And so I have a YouTube screen of me and another computer right next to me, and it looks a little strange. It's kind of fun. It's interesting to give a talk and to have people ask questions and not see them. It's kind of cool. Thank you, Ellen.
Okay. Do you want to go ahead and wrap this up, or?
Sure. So it seems as though there's no more questions. So thank you all for coming. Today actually is St. John's Eve. So hyvää juhannusta ja kiitos tulemisesta.